When my ex-wife called to tell me she was marrying a millionaire and that our kids would finally have a real father, I thought that was rock bottom. 24 hours later, I learned something worse. My own family had stolen $100 million from me and kept it hidden for 20 years. My name is Daniel Harwick. I'm 42. Until last week, I was a construction foreman in Queens, laying foundations for buildings I'll never afford to live in. You've probably walked past me 100 times. Work boots caked in concrete, a pickup truck with a cracked windshield, coffee from the bodega because Starbucks is for people with better jobs. I was the invisible man who built the city. My ex, Veronica, used to be a dental hygienist with a smile that stopped traffic. Now she's engaged to Preston Blackwood, who owns half of Manhattan's commercial real estate. My kids, Meredith and Trevor, 14 and 11, idolize him because he lets them ride in his helicopter and bought them phones that cost more than my rent. What nobody, not even me, knew was this. My grandfather, Theodore Teddy Harwick, left me more than a pocket watch and old photos when he died 20 years ago. He left me Harwick Industries, ownership and a fortune. My parents, Eleanor and Gordon Harwick, and my uncle Raymond hid it. They forged documents, lied to lawyers, and even declared me legally dead to keep me from claiming my inheritance. While I worked double shifts to cover child support, sleeping in my truck between jobs and watching my marriage fall apart because I couldn't provide the life Veronica wanted, my father lived off money he embezzled from my inheritance. Roughly $3 million over 2 decades for golf memberships and cruises, while I ate ramen. And Preston Blackwood, he knew who I was. His family had tried for years to take over Harwick Industries. When buying the company failed, Preston chose to marry into it by courting my children, the only other living heirs. This is how I went from being a nobody to reclaiming what was stolen. It's about learning that those who should protect you may betray you, and that justice can arrive late, wearing work boots and carrying a briefcase with your name on it. Friday evenings were sacred. At 6:30 sharp, I'd clear the blueprints off the kitchen table, prop my laptop on construction manuals, and wait for my kids' video call. My Queens apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, windows that faced a brick wall, a radiator that clanged. For those 30 minutes each week, it felt like the center of my universe. I was making instant coffee when the call came 5 minutes early, my first warning. Veronica was never early. "Hey, Dad," Meredith said, her blonde hair pulled back in the same ponytail I used to make before school. "Guess what? We have something huge to tell you." Trevor bounced into frame. "Mom said we could tell you first." My chest tightened. "What's going on? Did you make the travel team?" I asked. "Better," Trevor said. Veronica's manicured hand pulled him back and she positioned herself in the center of the screen. That's when I saw it. A diamond the size of a marble on her finger, reflecting light from a chandelier, not the apartment I'd been supporting. "Daniel, we need to talk about custody," she said, voice practiced like something rehearsed in a mirror. "Preston and I are getting married next month, and the kids will be moving into his penthouse on the Upper East Side." My coffee stopped halfway to my lips. "Wait, who's Preston?" "Preston Blackwood. We've been dating 8 months," she replied casually as if I should have known. A deep male voice answered off screen. "Let's show him the place, darling." The camera swung around and my cramped kitchen shrank. They were in a magazine-worthy living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, white leather furniture, chrome accents, the kind of place you're afraid to touch. "Dad, you should see this place," Meredith said, spinning the phone. "It has an elevator inside the apartment." Trevor rattled off more. Rooftop pool, home theater, a driver who takes them anywhere. I forced a smile. That sounds amazing, guys." Preston came into view. 51, salt and pepper hair, a tennis tan, a square jaw that looked like it belonged on currency. His suit probably cost more than my truck. He offered a hand toward the camera and said, "I want you to know I'm not trying to replace you. The children are lucky to have a dedicated father." Dedicated. That's what wealthy people called someone who was broke but still showed up. Veronica added, hand on Preston's chest like she was showing off a prize. "They'll have real opportunities now. Private schools in Switzerland, European vacations, trust funds that will set them up for life." Her words hit where she meant them. "I am their real father," she laughed. A dismissive sound I'd heard during every argument about money. You're a construction worker who can barely afford their soccer cleats. She mentioned how I'd split payment for Trevor's uniform into two checks last month. Preston had bought Trevor a signed Mickey Mantle baseball worth more than my annual salary. Be happy for them, she said. Meredith looked uncomfortable. It's okay, mister, she started. I cut in, steady for her sake. Your mom's right that Preston can give you things I can't. Trevor piped up. We still have our weekend next week, right? Let's go to Coney Island. Preston interrupted. We're taking them to Martha's Vineyard next weekend for sailing lessons, but the weekend after, certainly. They hung up. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the black screen. I pulled out a photo from a case, the three of us at Coney Island last summer. Trevor with ice cream on his nose, Meredith making bunny ears, all of us sunburned and laughing, our last real vacation. 7 nights at a motel, pizza on the boardwalk, sandcastles. Now my kids had boarding schools and sailing lessons. I had alternate weekends. The next morning, the sky was gray and drizzle scrubbed the city, a workday called off by 6 a.m. I used the time to do something I'd put off for 3 years, clean out my childhood bedroom at my parents' house in Westchester. The drive out of the city took me from concrete to tree-lined streets. The colonial house looked the same, white siding, black shutters, my mother's garden gnome by the walkway. Dad opened the door in khakis and a country club polo he couldn't really afford. His greeting was classic Gordon Harwick. Criticism before hello. Mom, Eleanor, came from the kitchen, gray hair still carefully styled, apron on. Have you eaten? I can make eggs. I said I was fine. I only wanted the room cleared for her craft space. Upstairs, the house squeaked in familiar spots. My old bedroom was a time capsule, Little League trophies, a Nirvana poster, college textbooks from the semester I'd quit when Veronica got pregnant. I started with the closet, pulling out untouched boxes, report cards, photos of my grandfather teaching me to fish, a letter tucked away for decades. From the kitchen, my mother called up, oddly, Daniel, I need to tell you something about the Blackwoods. Preston's father and your grandfather had business dealings years ago. I asked what kind. Nothing good, she said. Your grandfather never trusted them. Stay away. I kept moving things. When I tried to shift a heavy oak dresser, a baseboard came loose and revealed a hidden panel. Inside was a buttersoft leather briefcase stamped in gold. Daniel Theodore Harwick, my full name, the one Grandpa Teddy insisted on. My mother's face changed. Put it back, Daniel. It's nothing. Just old papers. But her hands were shaking. My father's footsteps thundered up the stairs. Gordon's face went from concern to furious. Shoot, where did that come from? He demanded. He lunged for the briefcase. I pulled back. It has my name on it, I said. I'm 42 years old. Eleanor began to cry. Gordon pulled out his phone and called my uncle Raymond. Raymond arrived in 5 minutes. Lawyer suit rumpled. Some things are better left buried, he said, trying to sound calm. Your great-grandfather wasn't the man you thought. I wanted to see for myself. The lock on the briefcase was a 5-digit combination. Gordon and Raymond claimed they didn't know it. I tried my birth date. Nothing. Then a memory, the day Grandpa taught me to ride a bike. This is the most important day of my life, Danny boy, he'd said. July 15th, 1990. I entered 07-15-90. The lock clicked. Inside were pristine documents, a handwritten letter on Grandpa Teddy's personal stationery, legal papers, bank statements with numbers that made my head spin, and ownership papers for Harwick Industries. I read the letter aloud while my family watched. My dear Danny, it began. If you're reading this, your parents have finally failed to keep their promise. I write on your 5th birthday, watching you play with the toy trucks I gave you. I leave my entire estate, all holdings in Harwick Industries, and my personal fortune to my grandson Daniel Theodore Harwick to be transferred upon his 21st birthday. Current valuation stands at $100 million. If my son Gordon contests this will, he forfeits his position at the company and his pension. The room erupted. Gordon slammed his fist on my old desk. I worked there for 15 years. I earned that position. Eleanor couldn't look at me. Raymond tried to explain. Teddy discovered theft. Gordon had embezzled over $200,000. Teddy changed his will to leave everything to me. After Teddy's sudden heart attack the next week, Gordon convinced everyone hiding the will was best to avoid scandal. Best for everyone? I asked, voice rising. I'd struggled for 20 years. Do you have any idea what my life has been like? Gordon's response was cold. You were 21. You dropped out of college because you got that girl pregnant. You would have squandered everything. That girl was my wife. Those pregnancies were his grandchildren. I dropped out and worked 3 jobs because I had nothing, because they made sure I had nothing. I read more from Grandpa's letter. He'd established educational trusts for any children of mine. My kids had trust funds this whole time while I worked double shifts to pay for a baseball uniform, and Veronica left because I couldn't provide. Eleanor averted her eyes. We were going to tell you eventually, she said, but you got married so young, had kids so fast. Gordon added, you weren't ready. When Veronica left, I was furious at the world. I lived in my car after the divorce. For 3 months, I showered at the gym and ate at soup kitchens. My kids thought I'd failed them. I told them the truth. I was living in my car. I'd lost everything, and Veronica was marrying someone else because I couldn't give them the life they wanted. Raymond listened, weak. You never told us it was that bad, he said. Would it have changed anything? I reminded them of every Christmas I showed up with dollar store gifts, every family dinner when I ordered water because I couldn't afford more. They had watched me struggle. I started recording on my phone. Say it again, Dad. Tell me why you stole $100 million from your son. Gordon lunged for the phone, but I stepped back. You record nothing. I held the camera steady. I'm recording everything. I looked at Uncle Raymond. You're a lawyer. Is this will legally binding? His shoulders fell. Yes. Witnessed, notarized, filed with the state. He admitted they'd told people I was unreachable and later that I'd died. Raymond had provided a death certificate. They lied to the Harwick board to avoid succession questions. I gathered the briefcase documents, my hands steady despite the anger. You stole my life. You stole my children's future. You let my marriage collapse while you lived off my inheritance. Eleanor asked where I was going, to take back what's mine. If any of you try to stop me, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. I named the crimes: embezzlement, fraud, forgery, and imagined the headlines. Gordon's face flushed purple with fury. You wouldn't dare disgrace this family, he hissed. You disgraced this family 20 years ago. I'm going to make you pay, I said. Monday morning, I called Harwick Industries from my truck outside their Manhattan headquarters, the same building I'd walked past 100 times, with my grandfather's name carved in marble above the entrance. I asked for Wallace Sterling, the CEO, and told the receptionist Daniel Theodore Harwick was calling about his inheritance. After a pause, Wallace came on the line. Mr. Harwick, my God. Teddy told me you'd come back. I've been waiting 20 years. He explained my family had told Harwick I died in a car accident in 2005 and that Raymond had provided a death certificate. The company had been in litigation ever since, with the Blackwoods repeatedly trying hostile takeovers. Everything snapped into place. Preston Blackwood hadn't stumbled into my life by accident. His family had been circling Harwick for years. When buying the company failed, they tried other routes, investigating living heirs, including my children. Preston had targeted Veronica 18 months earlier. He hoped that by marrying her and bringing the children into his family, he could claim Harwick as Teddy's descendants. Wallace urged me to come in immediately and bring every document. If the letter and ownership were valid, I was looking at becoming CEO of a company now valued at roughly $400 million. 3 hours later, I sat in a boardroom large enough to fit my entire apartment, surrounded by lawyers calling me Mr. Harwick with a new respect. Wallace Sterling, dignified in his 70s, stood with tears as he shook my hand. You look just like him, he said. Within 2 hours, the forensic accountant had traced Gordon's embezzlement. About $3 million over 20 years, moved through shell accounts in the Caymans. He'd been sloppy. The money trail was clear. That afternoon, a legal team came with me to my parents' house. Gordon tried to shut the door, but a lawyer blocked it. Gordon Harwick, you are being sued for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit inheritance theft, the lawyer announced. I offered a choice: cooperate and sign back what was stolen with interest, or face criminal charges and federal prosecutors. Raymond read the lawsuit, and his face went white. This is criminal territory, he whispered. We could all go to prison. I gave them an hour to decide. While they argued, I drove to Preston Blackwood's penthouse. The doorman hesitated until I showed a business card with a name I'd borrowed, Daniel T. Harwick, CEO, Harwick Industries. The elevator played classical music. Veronica opened the door in designer loungewear, a glass of wine in hand. "You can't just show up," she said. "Preston has security." I smiled and told the doorman the CEO wanted to discuss illegal takeover attempts. Preston emerged from his study, annoyed until he saw me. "You're supposed to be dead," he said, then fell silent as I laid out what I knew. How he'd researched me, how he'd targeted Veronica, how marriage and adoption were backup plans to secure a claim on Harwick. Preston's composure cracked. He insisted I couldn't prove anything. "The FBI will," I said. "Your father's attempted hostile takeovers and the falsified death claims are federal crimes." Meredith and Trevor ran in and froze. "Dad, what are you doing here?" they asked. "Just handling business," I said. "Turns out your dad's not the failure everyone thought he was." 6 months later, I stood in the Harwick boardroom looking out at the Manhattan skyline from the 40th floor. The towers I'd helped build now spread out like a map. Meredith organized my desk the way she organized schoolwork. Trevor spun in a conference chair until he got dizzy. "Dad, this view is insane," Trevor said, pressing against the window. I pointed to a half-finished tower in Queens and told him, "I laid the foundation on that one last year." The fallout was swift. Gordon and Eleanor relocated to a one-bedroom in Florida with frozen assets pending prosecution. Gordon faced 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Raymond lost his law license and was later reported working as a paralegal in Buffalo, earning far less than before. Veronica and Preston's wedding never happened. The FBI arrested Preston 2 weeks after our confrontation for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. The Blackwoods had a history of targeting inheritances through marriage and adoption. Preston faced a long federal sentence. Veronica came to my office uninvited afterwards and said she loved me, that the money didn't matter, and we could try again. I told her the truth. When things got hard, she didn't stand by me. She tried to erase me from our children's lives. "You were trying to give yourself a better life, not them," I said. She left crying. I didn't follow. The sweetest vindication came from my children. They chose to live with me full time. We didn't move into Grandpa Teddy's restored Connecticut estate. We rented a brownstone in Brooklyn, comfortable, not flashy, with a backyard for baseball and a kitchen where we cooked dinners together. One night while making spaghetti, Meredith said, "Mom was wrong about needing a different father. You were already perfect." I replied, "Being rich doesn't make someone a good father. You were a good father when you had nothing." Trevor added, "You're actually cooler now that you don't have to worry about money all the time. You smile more." My grandfather's will had set up trust funds for both kids, but with conditions. They couldn't access the money until each had worked 5 years at any job. "Real wealth," I told them, "is understanding work before you understand money." Wallace Sterling became my mentor like Teddy had been for him. He taught me the business and shared stories about my grandfather I'd never heard. He told me Teddy had spoken of me often and would be proud of the man I'd become despite everything. I visit Grandpa Teddy's grave with my children every month. Flowers are always there. When Meredith asked if I'd forgive Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Gordon, I said forgiveness isn't forgetting. Maybe someday. When Trevor asked if I'd forgive them if they did something terrible, I told him nothing they could do would stop me from loving them. That never changes. This could have ended with me as a bitter millionaire bent on revenge. It didn't. I lost the family I thought I had and gained the family I was meant to build. My grandfather's true gift wasn't just money. It was the chance to become the man he believed I could be. I inherited both fortune and problems, and somehow that made the difference. If this story resonated with you, if you felt betrayed by family or underestimated by others, please like and share. Subscribe for more true stories about redemption, justice, and family. Thank you for watching. Remember, sometimes the greatest inheritances aren't dollars, but the strength to rebuild when everything falls apart.